Learning outcomes. After studying this module, you shall be able to understand the meaning and importance of international business, know the nature and scope of international business, identify the main drivers of globalization that have led to expansion of international business, understand the changes in world economy resulting from globalization. Introduction. The world economy has undergone a paradigm change. It has moved from comprising of self-contained economic units to a global market comprising of economically integrated and interdependent units. The perceived distances between countries are shrinking with advancement in transportation and telecommunication technology and convergence of material culture across nations. The phenomenon behind such a movement is referred to as globalization. Globalization can be viewed in terms of four basic aspects. The first one is trade and transactions. The second one, capital and investment movements. The third one, migration and movement of people. And lastly, the fourth one, dissemination of knowledge. The process of integrating the domestic economy with the rest of the world marked with the event spillover effects such as an event in one part of the world would have implication for the rest of the world. This is known as globalization. Prominent example of spillover effects can be the US subprime crisis, the Eurozone crisis, rise in international crude oil prices, and etc. Though these crises occurred in specific regions of the world, the entire world economy faced their consequences. With the globalization gaining moment, there has been a marked growth in external trade, foreign direct and portfolio investment, international labor movement and flow of knowledge between countries. Globalization debate. Is globalization good? Advocates of globalization suggest that globalization has a positive impact on nations' economic growth and poverty reduction. They are of the opinion that globalization leads to better utilization of natural resources, capital formation through FDI, technological upgradation, and employment generation. Critics of globalization find weak association with globalization and economic growth. They are of the opinion that globalization leads to environment degradation, dilution of national cultural values, and vulnerability to external shocks. The table above shows that globalization has positive as well as negative implications for economies. However, the positives of globalization are seen to outweigh its negatives. Globalization is the need of the hour, and a nation cannot sustain for long without opening itself to rest of the world. At the firm level, globalization has been a blessing for companies. With globalization, it has been possible for companies to capitalize their competitive advantage, procure raw materials from the cheapest locations, sell in expensive markets, and benefit from the technology transfers and so on. International business. International business is a manifestation of globalization. It refers to all business activities which involve cross-border transaction of goods, services, and resources between two or more countries. Transaction of economic resources include capital, skill, labor for international production of physical goods and services such as banking, finance, insurance, and etc. Thus, international business includes, in addition to international trade of goods and services, foreign investment. A firm foraying into the global arena needs to critically navigate through the dynamic global environment and strategically determine when, the timing of entry, where, the location selection, and how, the mode of entry, to maneuver into the foreign territory. The broad modes of entry which a firm may choose are trade related, which are export, import, and counter trade. The second one being contractual mode, which are leasing, licensing, franchising, and turnkey projects. The third one being the investment mode, which is the foreign direct investment and the foreign portfolio investment. Coming to the importance of international business. International business is known to play a vital role at both the micro and as well as the macro level for both the parent as well as the host country. No country today, developed or developing, is self-sufficient. Countries benefit by exporting products which they can produce at lower cost and importing products which they are unable to produce at all or produce at a high cost. All countries import products to supplement their domestic production. The importance of international business is evident in the following. The first one being resource inequality. No country, whether developed or developing, produces all goods and services that it requires. Countries import items that are unable to produce domestically. At the same time, they export items which they can produce in excess of their domestic requirements. This helps countries to restore the balance of payments. Such international trade allows countries to specialize in production and export of goods that it can produce most effectively, while importing goods that can be produced most effectively elsewhere. It is for this reason that Iceland, which is not able to produce oranges due to its climate condition and soil quality, can add oranges to its diet. Iceland abounds in fish, which it exports to other countries. This cross-border trade helps in equilibrating the resource inequality inherent in countries. Some countries have bountiful oil and natural gas reserves. Some abound in coal, some are mineral rich, some have ample production of particular spices and so on. At the same time, there are countries that have merged above resources and plenty of some other resources. The international trade mechanism helps countries deficient in one or more product and service to procure it from countries that abound in it. The next one is the foreign direct investment. With the growth of IT, several service enterprises have relocated their value creation activities to different countries in order to benefit from favorable resource conditions such as low cost and highly skilled labor. For example, Procter & Gamble has relocated some of its back official accounting functions to Philippines, as accountants trained in the US accounting rules can be hired at a much lower salary in Philippines. For the same reason, Dell has opened its call centers in India. Also, Microsoft and IBM have their software development and testing facilities located in India. By such location, Microsoft can work on its software 24 hours a day, thereby reducing the time taken to develop new software products. With FDI, firms can take advantage of specific assets or resource endowments tied to a particular foreign location, which firms find productive and profitable to combine with its unique assets, which may be technology, marketing, or managerial know-how, and so on. It is for this reason that many of the world's oil companies invest in countries with abundant oil resources so as to capitalize on their technological and managerial know-how by combining it with this location-specific resource. Capital flight from MNCs lead to capitalist formation in the host country. This cause increase in the host country's productive capacity, leading to an increase in the host country's GDP and hence its economic growth. With foreign firms operating in the host country, the variety of goods and services offered to host countries' residents increases. They have a wider pool of goods and services to choose from now. This leads to an increase in the standard of living in the host country, conducive to economic development. Multinational companies' activities in host country open up new employment opportunities in the host country. This reduces poverty in host country and fosters economic development, as people will now have more money to purchase goods and services. Example of opening of various multinational fast food outlets in India such as McDonald's, Pizza Hut, Domino's, etc. has generated employment opportunities for people working in them. The underutilized resources of the host country find optimal utilization in light of multinational companies' management, funds and technological support and competition. The foreign companies' entry into the host country market leads to competition in the host country market, which produces hankering to produce better and cheaper through reduction in wastage, etc., with ultimate gains to consumers in terms of increased variety and lower costs. The second one is nature of international business. International business, as the name suggests, involves operation across nations. Major forms of international businesses are cross-border trade, technical collaboration and investment. Domestic business is confined to national boundaries, while international business transcends national frontiers. International business operates in a different environment in almost every host country. Countries vary in their social, cultural, economical, political and technological setup. Business need to respond to these environmental changes effectively. The example of beef hamburger is an important item on McDonald's menu in many countries. However, beef socially unacceptable in India, McDonald's does not sell hamburgers which are made up of beef here. Rather, it offers varieties suited to Indian tongues such as aloo tikki burger, mek veg, etc. Often to cope with these environment differences, multinational companies follow different orientations. A business strategy suited to one host country environment may not be suitable to another country environment. This explains the complexity of international business. Major international business orientations are as follows. The first one being the ethnocentric orientation. Under the ethnocentric orientation, firms do not differentiate between domestic and global business policies and adopt the home country policies in all areas of its operation. It focuses on the values of the parent company for formulating and implementing its international strategy. The next one being the polycentric orientation. Polycentric orientation is based on the premise that local values and interests are the most appropriate guide to a firm's international strategy. A company following the polycentric orientation formulates and implements a business strategy best suited to its host country environment. Such multinational companies open subsidiaries in different countries, and each subsidiary has a business strategy situated to its environment, independent of the business strategy of their subsidiaries. The third one is the regiocentric orientation. Companies following the regiocentric orientation consider one region, ignoring national boundaries, as one market. Such companies frame their business strategy region-wise. Each region has its own strategy depending on the regional characteristics. Example, a company may have markets in two regions, say Asia, Pacific and Middle East. An MNC with the regiocentric orientation will formulate and implement two strategies appropriately suited to each of its two regions. The fourth and the last one being the geocentric orientation. A company with geocentric orientation sees the whole world as a single market. It formulates and implements a business strategy for the whole of the global market, taking the world as a single region. The choice of a certain international orientation would eventually be guided by factors such as financial pockets of the firm, nature and size of the firm, knowledge and experience in a particular market, type of offering and so on. The third one is the scope of international business. International business operate in the global arena, hence their management function also have a global aspect to them. All major management decisions such as planning for raw materials, finances, production location, markets, organizing the firm's structure, HR and resources for optimal operation, directing through far-sighted visions and effective leadership, coordinating functions across operations spread across countries and controlling have been taken bearing in mind the global markets. Thus, international businesses are global firms operating in global offices, recruiting a global staff, carrying our global operations and productions, catering to the global market in the light of global environment. Drivers of international business. International business has flourished in recent decades. It is intuitive that the desire to expand sales, procure inputs timely and cost effectively, and to diversify financial risks through geographic diversification have led to growth in international business operations. However, the subtle underliers are as follows. Declining trade and investment barriers. In the decade of 1920s and 1930s, several nation states imposed stringent barriers to international trade and FDI in order to safeguard domestic producers. Both tariff and non-tariff barriers were imposed. Consequently, countries came into a beggar thy neighbor mode and adopted retaliatory trade policies by progressively raising trade barriers against one another. This ultimately contributed to the Great Depression of 1930s. This experience caused the advanced industrial nations to move barriers to trade and investment after World War II. This decline in barrier to the movement of goods, services and capital between countries have given an impetus to international business operation. The emergence of global institutions. The World Trade Organization successors of GATT, that is General Agreement on Trade and Tariff, had been created to supervise and liberalize international trade. The organization deals with regulation of trade between participating countries, providing a framework to negotiating and formalizing trade agreements and resolving disputes between members. Institutions such as World Bank, the IMF, the United Nations have all supported international business operation. The World Trade Organization deals with the global rules of trade between nations. Its main function is to ensure that world trade flows as smoothly, predictably and freely as possible. This institution has given a boost to international trade and investment activities. Technological change. Reduction in barriers to trade and investment have made globalization of products and markets a theoretical possibility. Technological changes has made this possibility a tangible reality. Since 1945, there has been significant advancement in communication and information processing along with explosive emergence and growth of Internet and World Wide Web and transportation technology. Breakthrough technological advancement in transportation technology have made the world a global village. Likewise, technological advances in telecommunication have created a global audience from Bombay to Beijing to Boston. People are watching MTV, wearing blue denims and listening to their iPods while commuting to work. Microprocessor and telecommunication. Development of the microprocessor has been a remarkably significant innovation that has enabled the growth of high power, low cost computing, enormously increasing the amount of information that can be processed by individuals and firms. Microprocessors are the starting point of many recent advancements in the telecom technology. Development in satellite, optical fiber, wireless technology, internet and World Wide Web has revolutionized global communications. The internet and the World Wide Web, rapid growth of internet and World Wide Web is a manifestation of revolutionary technological advancement. In the year 1990, less than 1 million users were connected to the internet. By 1995, the figure increased to 50 million and in 2004, the number rose to around 950 million. Since then, the count has been rising exponentially. Now the internet and the World Wide Web are the information backbone of world global economy. Cross-border transactions have been expanded, the volume of web-based traffic. The World Wide Web acts like an equalizer in the global arena by overcoming the constraints of location, size and time zones to a great extent. The transportation technology. Several major innovations have taken place in the transportation technology since World War II. The important among them have been the development of commercial jet aircraft, superfighters and introduction of containerization that has simplified transshipment from one mode of transport to another. The commercial jet air travel has shrunk the entire world by effectively reducing travel time. As transportation costs associated with globalization of production have significantly reduced, locating production facilities at varied, suitable locations have become economical. With the advancement in technology, cost of processing information and communications have plummeted. These developments enable a firm to create and manage global spread production system. For example, Dell uses the internet to control its globally located production system to an extent that it holds inventory worth just 3 days at its assembly locations. Dell also uses modern communication technology and outsources its customers' operation to India. Apart from globalization of production, technological development have also caused globalization of markets. Cost-effective communication networks such as the World Wide Web have created a virtual marketplace. The online market is gaining momentum and people are moving towards it. Improvements in transportation technology have made it possible to transship materials facilitating global markets. Though technological advancements have supported international business operations a great deal, yet differences in national culture, consumer preference and business practices still remain. No multinational company can afford to ignore these differences in the wake of world being shrunk into one global village and markets getting global. Increasing competition. With the increase in competition, firms seek to procure raw materials at the cheapest possible cost, locate production facilities where cheap labor and other resources are available in order to reduce the overall cost of production, Firms are dispersing their production facilities to suitable location to reduce the cost of production and risk so as to sustain in the competitive arena. Moving on to the changes in the world economy resulting from globalization. The demographics of multinational companies have exhibited two noteworthy trends. The first one being rise of non-US multinationals. In the decade of 1960 and before, the global business arena was dominated by major US MNCs. The US firms accounted for around 65 to 70% of FDI during the period. This shows that most MNCs were US based business. Almost half of the world's largest MNCs were US firms. UK was the next important MNC source, followed by Japan. The large proportion of US MNCs reverberate the US dominance in the post-war period, while the large proportion of MNCs from UK indicates its industrial dominance in the beginning of the 20th century. By the year 2000, the pattern started to change. In 2002, US firms accounted for around a quarter percentage, which is 25% of the world's largest multinationals, followed by France, Germany and Britain. These trends indicate that globalization of world economy has reduced the global dominance of US firms. Though the largest MNCs are still from developed countries, yet MNCs from the developing economies have sprouted, thrived and grown. For example, Hutchinson Whampoa from Hong Kong, China, Singtel of Singapore, Cemex of Mexico, etc. A large number of small MNCs have mushroomed in the developing countries. These firms are emerging as potential threats to the incumbents in the global markets. The rise of mini multinationals. The rise of mini multinational is another important change that world economy is facing. Declining barriers to trade and investment and rapid technological advancements have helped these firms to acquire a global feature. Although even today, international business operations are dominated by giant, complex MNCs, yet the presence of mini multinationals cannot be overlooked. Example, the Bridgewater Pottery, the Cardiac Services, the Lubricating System, the GW Bath, etc. The global economy has undergone many changes in the last 30-35 years. Barriers to international trade and investment have significantly been reduced. The volume of global trade and investment is growing faster than the global output, indicating greater integration between world economies and move towards a unified global economic system. This has been caused several developing economies such as South Korea and Taiwan to advance to the rank of developed economies. Markets are getting privatized, deregulated and open. This shows that we are moving towards an economic system more congenial to international business. The graph shows the FDI inflows and outflows from the world have increased between 1970 to 2013. However, 2012-13 was the year wherein the global economic shocks, particularly the Eurozone crisis and US economy meltdown, caused adverse investment sentiment which reduced FDI flows. The average growth in volume of world merchandise export has been close to 6% for the period between 2005 and 13, and growth in GDP has been close to 4% on an average during the whole period. With the year 2000 as base, the ratio of the world exports of goods and commercial services to GDP has increased from 90 in 1980 to approximately 124 in the year 2010. Let us summarize what we have discussed so far. The world economy has undergone a paradigm change. It has moved from comprising of self-contained economic units to a unified global market. The force behind such integration is globalization. The process of integrating the domestic economy with the rest of the world market with event spillover effects such that an event in one part of the world would have implication for the rest of the world is called globalization. International business is a manifestation of globalization. It refers to all business activities which involve cross-border transaction of goods, services and resources between two or more countries. Major international business orientations are polycentric orientation, ethnocentric orientation, geocentric orientation and the regiocentric orientation. The scope of international business is very wide. It encompasses all major management functions. It includes international finance, international human resource management, international accounting, and international production and marketing. Declining trade and investment barriers, emergence of WTO, technological advancement, and increased competition are the major drivers of globalization. With the globalization, the number of non-US multinational firms has increased and several mini multinational have also cropped. Barriers to international trade and investment have significantly been reduced, and we are moving to a global economic system that fosters international business. Thank you.